The officer shot and killed 18-year-old Brown on August 9th, reigniting a conversation in this country about race and responsibility. LeBron James posted an image to Instagram and Twitter of Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown with the caption that read, "As a society, how do we do better and stop things like this happening time after time? I'm so sorry to these families. Violence is not the answer, people. Retaliation isn't the solution as well." He put the hashtags of prayers up to the families, hashtag we have to do better. Stephen A. Smith, your reaction to LeBron's post.
Well, first of all, I deeply appreciate LeBron's tweet because I think it mirrors the feelings of a lot of us within the African-American community. Obviously, regardless of how calm I sound, I'm pretty peeved and pretty ticked off at the resolution that was reached. We understand where the prosecutor is coming from in terms of giving the evidence to a grand jury, interviewing over 70 people, going through loads and loads of testimony and reaching the conclusion that they reached. We don't understand, to some degree, a lot of us within the African-American community, why such a conclusion was reached. We're a bit ticked off about it. We're obviously upset about it because in the end, an unarmed 18-year-old black child / young man is dead. And obviously that's a devastating bit of information, that's a devastating fact, rather, to all of us, because that's what it comes down to. The issues of police brutality and things of that nature in our community is something that resonates with us all. It has resonated with us as a community for decades, if not longer, and that needs to be said. So we understand where the feelings, the sentiments come from right now. And, you know, you lean on a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King when you talk about riots and things of that nature. It's Dr. Martin Luther King, if I remember correctly, once said the riots are the language of the unheard. So you have people out there who consider themselves to be unheard, making sure that they're going to be heard at this particular moment in time. Having said all of that, again, piggybacking off of a LeBron James quotes, along with that of our president, who said, quote, President Barack Obama, while he was deeply disappointed, he added that he understood that people were deeply disappointed, but we need to focus on ways to get the police and the public on the same page. That won't be done by throwing bottles. That won't be done by smashing car windows. That won't be done by using this as an excuse to vandalize property. And it certainly won't be done by hurting anybody. And so that's the underlying message that needs to resonate on this day. Nothing is going to bring Michael Brown back. There is still an investigation being conducted by the U.S. Department of Justice, where ultimately federal charges could potentially be brought against this particular police officer. We are a nation of laws. It's incumbent upon us to remember that and to honor that accordingly, because for me, I just don't want anybody else hurt or killed. I don't want something to happen. And I think if people are out there obviously upset and incredibly irritated over the decision that was reached and announced by the prosecutor, obviously they're going to be tempted, as we saw last night, to react in a very volatile manner. That solves nothing. And that needs to be said, because I got news for you. The one thing that also needs to be said, and I'm saying this, and I don't expect Skip to have to say this. It's incumbent upon me to say this. As a black man that's on television every single day, there are black folks dying all the time, and it's not always by the hand of a police officer or somebody white. There are black folks killing black folks every day, and I don't see us rioting and acting up then. So let's make sure that we keep that in mind when we preach about the importance of being lawful, of obeying the law, and letting justice be served through the legal system that we all fall under in this nation. We have to conduct ourselves in a lawful and peaceful fashion. And I think LeBron James, President Barack Obama, even Sheldon Richardson for the New York Jets, and others have articulated exactly what I'm articulating right now.
And I deeply appreciate all the thoughts you just expressed so eloquently. on these issues, I always preface on this show by saying, I can't feel about this issue the way you feel. I can't feel the way Carrie feels about this issue. In so many ways, I don't feel worthy or even qualified to comment on this issue. But I'm going to give you, from my heart as a white man, how I do feel in the big picture about this. I am tired of seeing young black men killed under suspicious circumstances. I wish I could comment further on this case, but Stephen A., I don't know enough to comment. I think you're with me on this.
Absolutely.
I don't know exactly what happened between that white police officer and that young black man. I don't know exactly why a grand jury took about a month to sift through the facts as they could find them and choose not to indict the police officer. I don't know, so I'm going to move on to LeBron's tweet. I applaud it. I thought it was sensational for, once again, the best player in the National Basketball Association to step a little bit out onto a limb and take a stand on an issue outside of basketball, an issue upon which LeBron could risk alienating some of the people who buy some of the products that he endorses. It's a bold statement. It's a good statement. It's profound. It was balanced. It was measured. And the conclusion he drew was the conclusion you just expressed. And this is the one area in which LeBron James sets himself apart from a man he idolized, Michael Jordan. Michael refused to take stands, or not refused, he avoided taking stands on issues outside of basketball, on volatile social issues, issues within the black community. He just avoided taking those stances, and I think we all know why. Protecting his brand, just didn't want to get involved. I don't know, you know him as well as I do, Stephen A. Maybe he just didn't feel qualified in some cases to take those stands, but he didn't, and LeBron James has. And again, I, for one, applaud him for continuing to take these stands because he's transcending the sport of basketball. You've talked about it in a business way that he has, but in a social way, he's breaking ground for professional athletes.
Well, I definitely agree with you on that, and I can't say enough about him and his willingness to speak out on a bevy of issues, and I applaud LeBron James the world over because of that. That's why I got so much love for him. But I also think that it's incumbent upon all of us, particularly in the black community, to recognize that don't just applaud LeBron James for expressing himself on this particular issue. Listen to the content of his message.
Yep.
He questioned, why does this keep happening?
Yep.
He's asking for answers, and he's also asking that we do so in that we all do the same in a very peaceful and nonviolent way. And that's the message. A lot of times on a bevy of issues, we'll find ourselves as a black community completely irate over a particular issue. And I certainly understand because I'm one of those people who feels that way as well. But at the same time, sometimes the message gets lost because all we focus on is the messenger. So people are will be quick rather to say, well, LeBron James spoke out about it. Well, make sure you remember what he said. Make sure that you remember that he's asking the question. Make sure that you remember that he's asking for answers. The rest of us, it's incumbent upon us to demand those answers as well. But we also have to follow the lead of the greatest basketball player in the world and the president of the United States, who also happens to be black, along with a bevy of NFL players out there. We also have to take their lead and recognize that even they are saying, look, search into this. Don't let up. Make sure we find answers somehow, some way. But we have laws for a reason, and let's make sure that we abide by them. Because I got news for you. Some of those businesses that were being looted and things of that nature, those were black-owned businesses. Yep. Those police officers' cars that were being burnt or vandalized, those are the same police officers that you're going to dial 911 to call for help when you think you need it. So let's keep that in mind and make sure that we toe the line. And I think that's important to mention.
Gentlemen, at this hour, buildings are still burning in Ferguson. There was sporadic looting throughout the night, and so far there have been about 36 arrests and counting. This breaks my heart and reminds me that history does repeat itself. The scariest and perhaps the saddest thing that I've ever witnessed, the '92 riots in Los Angeles. I saw people fight, buildings burned, and of course I saw looting. And when it was all said and done, 53 people died, thousands more arrested. But in the end, the grand scheme of things, a community, as Stephen A. just mentioned, was angry but left with nothing. President Obama said we have an issue in America. It's a human issue, and violence is not the answer. Violence is not the answer. Prayers up for Ferguson. First Take will be right back in just a few moments.